Yeah, so last night I go over to my parents' place and my dad's just sitting in the chair. He's all like, oh, I'm not feeling good. I'm like, oh no. He's like, well, do you have a teaching prepared for tomorrow, Joe? I'm like, I can. And I did. So you guys are getting to experience that this morning. Now, there's a guy in the Bible named David. He was the youngest son of Jesse. He was just the shepherd. And when Samuel came to say, hey, I'm here to anoint the next king, who is it? They weren't even thinking about David. He brought all his sons except for David. He's like, do you have any more sons? Well, I guess there's David. And David was anointed the next king of Israel. He went on to defeat Goliath. He became friends and related to the king through marriage, King Saul through marriage, had a great relationship with them. And even when the relationship changed and Saul wanted David dead, he still showed respect to what God had instituted. He had an opportunity to kill Saul multiple times, but he decided, no, God put him in this place. I'm not going to go against what God instituted. God can take care of Saul. So he showed mercy, he showed grace, he showed love to Saul. And eventually, Saul did pass away, and David did become king. And he had many awesome victories for Israel. He was amazing. He was called a man after God's own heart. But eventually, things kind of took a turn for him, and he had some rough patches. And in 2 Samuel chapter 11, that's kind of when things got really bad for David. So in 2 Samuel 11, it says, in the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. They destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah. But David remained in Jerusalem. And while his men were out fighting, David was just hanging out at his palace, out on the roof, looking down over his kingdom. And he was walking around, and then something caught his eye. Or should I say, someone. And her name was Bathsheba, taking a bath. So I guess the name fits. And yeah, and so King David saw her and was like, she's looking pretty good, and sent her men to go get her and bring her to the palace. And he slept with her, and eventually she got pregnant. And he was like, uh-oh, I thought I was just going to have a little fling and not have to deal with it. But all of a sudden, her husband's out to war. She's pregnant. Something's not adding up here. I got a plan. So he had her husband, Uriah, sent back to the kingdom. And he was talking to Uriah, like, how are things going? How's the battle? He's like, oh, they're going good. And he says, awesome. How about you go home to your wife? Because his plan was, great, he'll be here, sleep with her. Then, oh, she's pregnant. It's amazing. It's Uriah's. It's not mine. But Uriah started acting like old David. He's like, there's no way I'm going to go home to my wife if the rest of the men are out fighting. I can't do that. And David's like, why you got to be such a good guy, Uriah? So the next day, David's like, I know what to do. He had Uriah there again, gets him drunk. He's like, this drunk Uriah will go home and be with his wife. But he didn't. Even after drinking, he stayed away from his wife. Because again, if the other men are out fighting, I can't rightly go home and take time with my wife if they're not getting to do that. And so David is starting to freak out, and he has a plan. He gives Uriah basically his own death sentence. He says, hey, give this to Joab. And the letter tells Joab to send Uriah to the front lines and have the rest of the men stand back. He's saying, hey, let Uriah get killed. And Joab followed orders, and Uriah was killed. And so after that, David brings Bathsheba back to the palace and like, oh no, her husband is died in battle. I'll marry her. So he's the hero in the story. Oh, her husband died. I'll marry her and bring her to the palace. Oh, and now she's pregnant, having an heir. Oh, it's an amazing time right now. Because none's the wiser. It's hidden. It's secret. But then 2 Samuel chapter 12 happens. Nathan gets sent to David to confront him. And to start things off, Nathan tells David a story about a rich man who has a ton of cattle, a ton of lambs. He's living life good. He's got everything that he needs. And then he tells of a poor man who simply has one little lamb that he cares for it well. It's like a son to him. He loves this lamb. But the rich man has someone come visit. And the rich man didn't want to give up one of his cattle, didn't want to give up one of his lambs. And so the rich man took the lamb of the poor man and used that for the meal. And so when King David heard this story, he got furious. He got mad. He's like, who could do such a thing? Bring this man to me. He needs to be punished. Then Nathan says to David, you are that man. You are the man. And not like, man, you're the man. No, you are the man. And David realized he did what the rich man did in that story, and that he sinned and needed to go to God with this. Now, it says, you are the man. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I anointed you king over Israel, and I delivered you from the hand of Saul. I gave your master's house to you, and your master's wives into your arms. I gave you all Israel and Judah. And if all this had been too little, I would have given you even more. Why did you despise the word of the Lord by doing what is evil in his eyes? You struck down Uriah the Hittite with the sword and took his wife to be your own. You killed him with the sword of the Ammonites. Now, that's a big change from sparing Saul to now sending someone off to go get killed and taking their wife. And there's a lot of lessons to be learned with that. But there's one thing I want to focus on today. And I want to focus on David's response to Nathan before David got called out. David was upset because of what the wealthy man did. He had plenty, but took what the poor man had. And so what Nathan said is that David had plenty of wives. He had everything he needed, money, he had women. But what did David do? He took the wife of a poor man. And so before he got caught out, that was secret, but that's exactly what happened in the story. So in the story, he's saying, how dare that rich man do that to that poor person? So before he got called out, how was David acting? The word starts with an H. Hypocritical. Ooh, yeah, he was acting hypocritical because he was this man that had all this stuff, took it from the poor person, getting mad at this rich man who had all these lambs and cattle, but took the one from the poor person. He was being hypocritical. And one of the biggest complaints I hear about the church is that it is full of hypocrites. But here's the deal, though. We're all hypocrites. So that's not necessarily a lie that people say the church is full of hypocrites, but here's the thing. You are too, which, don't get mad at me, but who here's lied before? And then got super mad at someone for lying. Yeah, here's the thing. We seem to have heightened the idea of hypocrite, that's the worst offense you can do. How dare you be a hypocrite? But let's go through the sin list, shall we? Again, who here's lied before? Okay. Has anyone here ever lusted after someone? What? Has anyone here ever stolen something, even if it was like change off of like your parents' counter? Or, yeah, so stolen. Has anyone here ever disrespected their parents? On Mother's Day. Oh my goodness. No. Oh, hypocrites, no. Has anyone here like just yelled at someone out of anger? Yeah. See, these are things that we've all done. But for some reason, when other people do it, we're like, oh, they're the worst. Yeah. Who here's ever, while driving, got really mad at someone because you got cut off? Yeah, or who here has ever accidentally missed the merging thing when there's road traffic and you go in front of everyone and you're like, oh, I guess there was something, and then you have to get in. Who's done that accidentally? But when we're the one in the line and we see someone doing that, we're like, they're the dumbest driver ever. How stupid are they? But we do the same thing. And that's kind of the mindset we should have. Like, oh, we do the same thing. And so we shouldn't be thinking, oh, they're a hypocrite. They should be thinking, oh, we're a lot more alike than we think. The church is a hospital. And who goes to the hospital? Sick people. If I was feeling really good, I'm like, man, I'm feeling 110%. I should go to the hospital today. Yeah, no, that doesn't make sense. If I'm like, man, I'm not feeling good, or I did something, I got hurt, I did something wrong, I'm going to the hospital. And so the church should not be surprised that it's full of people who are hurt, who are sick, who have been doing wrong, that are struggling. Because this is the place where they should be feeling loved and encouraged. And so it would make sense that there are hypocrites here, people that are trying to do good, saying, oh, I'm doing good, but still fall short every once in a while. And so we can't elevate hypocrisy, which I see happening a lot. Because I've seen more times than a lot that people on Facebook are like, oh, this church full of hypocrites, I'm never going in there anymore. Which is sad. That means, no, you should be there all the more to help them, to support them. For some reason, we've made hypocrisy the sin that we can't handle. Oh, someone's in addiction. Oh, let's help them. Let's get a recovery group from them. All this stuff, amazing. Oh, you messed up. You smoked it again. Well, don't worry about it. It takes time for these things. We're here for you. Oh, you're a hypocrite? Get out right now, or I'm leaving. I can't believe it. The church is full of hypocrites. But here's the thing. We're all created in the image of God. Genesis 1:1, not 1:1, but in Genesis 1, he says, let's create man and woman in our image. And he does. And so that means every one of you is in the image of God. And that means every one of you is valuable. And so it doesn't matter what the world says. They could say, oh, your value's based on how much money you have, your work. No, from the foundation of who you are, how God created you, you inherently have value. And so that means people that are sinning have value. And Romans 3:23 says this, all have sinned and all fall short of the glory of God. And so we see everyone's equally valuable and everyone's equally a sinner as well, because we've all fallen short except for me. No, just kidding. Just kidding. No, me especially. No, seriously. Man, everyone's stupid except for me. No, seriously. Everyone is equally valuable and has equally sinned. And so we can't elevate ourselves on the pedestal thinking, oh, I'm so great, I'm so wonderful, because that leads us to thinking everyone else is a hypocrite and not us. Because you're sinning as well. There's sins that you're doing. You might not notice it. You might be having it in secret like King David did. He didn't think he was being a hypocrite until he was called out and shown that he was. And so, we can't be putting ourselves on a pedestal, but rather seeing everyone as valuable and that we sin just as much as others, because that makes it so we can't be like, how dare you? Instead, we can be like, hey, I've been there too. Because when we think too highly of ourselves, again, that makes us that man. And I don't want to be that man. So we should approach hypocrisy like others sin. We shouldn't be surprised by it because, again, we all do it. But also, we are a church with broken people. And so we should humble ourselves and be ready to just deal with it sometimes. And it's just a struggle that we deal with. Don't treat it as this sin that shouldn't be pardonable. No, we've all done it, so we can show just as much forgiveness for that sin as others. You know, I like this saying, the church actually isn't full of hypocrites. There's always room for one more. And so we know whoever comes through that door, there's going to be a moment of hypocrisy with them, but we should still love them with open arms. Because we should want them here, because again, this is the hospital. We want healing to take place. We want them to have progress through growth here. Now, does that mean hypocrisy is okay? No, it doesn't. But don't be elevating it to a point where you just stay away from someone just because they made that mistake. And I got two quick things to kind of help us deal with this idea of hypocrisy. And the first thing is from 2 Samuel chapter 11, verse 1. Again, it says, in the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. They destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained in Jerusalem. So one thing that got him to that point of sinning and being in hypocrisy, we kind of start right here in this verse. What do you notice in this verse? Yeah, it says, at the time when kings go off to war, David just sent Joab. David remained in Jerusalem. So David was not where he was supposed to be. So I guess that means, are you where you're supposed to be right now? So if you're in church, yes, awesome, you are where you're supposed to be. But are you also in the right mindset where you're supposed to be? Are you here in the mindset, oh, I'm the king, everyone else can go, fight their own things, I'm good, I'm in the palace, I got nothing I need to do, nothing I need to, fight or deal with, I'm the king, I can have what I want. No, we should not be there. We should be out with the king's men, realizing there's struggles going on. There's spiritual warfare going on, and we should be in the ranks alongside our brothers and sisters, going through it with them, not just up in our palace looking down while they're fighting. Let's be a part of it as well. And when we're a part of it, that brings humility. And that's the second thing. We gotta have humility, which I know I talk about humility a lot, but humility is important. Philippians 2, 1-4 says, therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of one mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. If you put others first, even if they upset you, your focus is more on making sure they are good rather than what about me? Because when all your focus is on you, if someone does something to you, that's all you're going to focus on. You're not going to be like, are they struggling with something? What are they going through at home? They're not usually like this. And when we're focused solely on ourselves, we become easily offendable, quick triggers, and we don't want to be that. The Bible says we should be slow to anger. And so when we can focus on others and their well-being before ours, that leads it to more so a response rather than a reaction. Because a reaction is boo, ah. A response is boo. Oh, good one, Caitlin. Oh, you scared me. Oh. Yeah, no, we should be responding to these things, not just simply reacting, realizing they're going through something and you've gone through stuff too. So what can you do to actually help them rather than focusing on how you're feeling upset and how dare they make you feel that way? Listen to them. Now again, I'm not saying it's okay to be hypocritical, but there seems to be this standard on how it's, again, the unpardonable sin, even though we all do it. And so instead, let's just encourage one another. You know, the church is supposed to be edifying, encourage each other. And that helps us get through things. And if someone constantly said, man, you're terrible, you're awful, you'd start feeling down worse and worse and be weighted down by that. But when you encourage people, that actually produces better responses. You know, in the show Brain Games, they did this game where there was someone who was not good at basketball, but they just shoot free throws normally, and they just make a couple, but then the next time, everyone's just cheering them on, like, you got this, you can do it. And they ended up making more baskets. But then they bring a guy who's really good at basketball, is like sinking all of them. And the next time he shoots, he makes it, everyone's like, boo, awful, and making him feel down about it. And he actually ends up missing a bunch of shots because he's feeling down about himself. And so maybe instead of being, boo, you hypocrite, we can say, hey, I've been there too. And encourage them like, hey, this is a place where you can get healing. This is a place where you can mess up, but know that you're going to be lifted up rather than torn down. Now we're going to say, hey, that's a good job, you sinned. But we are going to say, hey, we're all working towards the same thing. Let's do it together. And I would not mind being that man. And I'm sorry if some of you have ever been on the receiving end of, you hypocrite, how dare you? Because, again, you are valuable. You are made in the image of God. And the person that said that has done almost the exact same thing you have. But you don't have to take that offense and return it back to them. Because again, even if you're receiving that from someone, you can be humble and care for them, because that just shows that they're struggling with something as well. So let's have this be a place of love and encouragement, even though it's full of hypocrites. I'm one too. This message is just as much for me as it is for you. And so as Ken gets ready to do the final song, I just want to, bring some prayer here. But before I do the blessing over the whole congregation, if there are some people here who have felt hesitant to God, hesitant to Jesus, hesitant to church because they feel like they've been ostracized, pushed out because you did something wrong and people said, how dare you? You hypocrite, you're trying to do good, but you did wrong. How dare you? You hypocrite. And that kind of made you fall away a bit. or never even come close to Jesus to begin with. With everyone's eyes closed and heads bowed, if you want to recommit, get closer to him again, or for the first time, go to Jesus and have a relationship with him, just feel free to raise your hand right now. All right, awesome. Well, I'm going to pray us out, and then Ken will have some worship for us. And during worship, if our prayer teams wouldn't mind coming to the front, they'll be available to pray with you. But God, we are so thankful for you and so blessed by you. Thank you for creating us, sending Jesus down to die for us and save us and restore us to relationship with you. And thank you for mercy, grace, and love. And I pray that we experience that from you, and that because we've experienced that from you, we can show it all the more to people. Because while we were still sinners, you showed your love for us, and while people still may be sinning against us, we can still pursue them and love them as well. So I pray that we're able to persevere in the midst of those situations, God, to show them love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and help lead them towards self-control, God, so that it's not an issue anymore, and so that they can help lead others away from those things that they may be struggling with. God, you are amazing, you are wonderful, you are an awesome God and worthy of all praise. So thank you. In your name.